Hello, welcome to Fireside Chats. I am Magla Pillay, and today we're looking at the subject called the Force. In this series, we take up various aspects surrounding spirituality. What is spirituality? How does it affect you as a human being? How you can grow as a result of deepening your spiritual understanding. And specifically, we ask you, the viewer, to look at what your relationship with God is and whether you can improve it and make it work for you in any way. Sister Denise, our speaker for today, has been practicing Raj Yoga meditation for 4 decades, and she brings to this show a depth and sense of wisdom that is really beautiful given her spiritual experience. Sister Denise, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very, very warm welcome to today's show.
Thanks.
The Force, that sounds rather esoteric, out there, out of this world. What does it mean, the Force?
Well, there is this well-known expression, may the Force be with you. And I think that there are a lot of people in this world who are very spiritual, but they don't really subscribe to the conventional religions. One of the things that happens is you want to find a vocabulary that doesn't have the load on it that is normally associated with the conventional religions. So the Force is such a word that is quite well known, and when you use the term the Force, I think it's quite clear that what you're referring to is that energy that is beyond, that you have access to, and that is your protector. So different attributes of God are kind of collected together in that word, but other attributes of God that are maybe not favored by those who don't want to be connected with conventional religion, they are discarded from that that meaning of the word, you see.
So it is an invitation, the expression, if one uses it in the spiritual context, is an invitation to rediscover your innate spirituality?
Well, yes, and it's, you see, one of the problems that's happening in this world is fanaticism, religious fanaticism, and so it actually gives religion a bad name in the sense that it puts religion as something that you have to be afraid of and something that seems to be antagonistic to what you normally associate with the word spirituality. And really, well, we also use the word spirituality because it's kind of more universal. It's not limited to one particular religion. It's not limited to the religious way, but it indicates something which is internal, which is subtle, which is a little mystical, and which you have access to independently of, organized religion. You have the exoteric, which is organized religion, and then you have the esoteric, which actually means the more inner aspects of the spiritual experience.
Mr. Denise, it is human nature to create a sense of belonging. And we don't only do this in terms of our immediate family. When we believe in something, a higher power, we also tend to want to be part of a structured religion or sect or ism because it's already in existence and we need a company. We're looking for people who share our beliefs. So what does a person do when you find yourself with a spiritual calling but nothing that you encountered already works for you? Where do you find spiritual solace?
I think that you don't always look for a group. What you're doing is going inside and looking for something that is very subtle, that's very internal, And then you're looking to see if there are any people who are like-minded or who share that kind of feeling. So yes, definitely this sense of belonging, but I don't think that it necessitates a formal group. I think there is a lot of preference nowadays for the informal association, because you may find people who more or less are similar to you but not totally, so you may sort of move in and out. You don't want anybody outside to tell you how to do your spiritual practice. But it works both ways, because while you don't want anybody to, dictate to you, you don't want to follow any dogmas. People are a little bit allergic to that word of dogma, and they don't want a dogmatic type of experience, but they want guidance, they want support, they want validation, but then also freedom of movement. So it has to be right. It doesn't have to be heavy-handed.
So somebody is embarking on a spiritual journey because he felt the call, the forces with him. There's things that we've learnt that doesn't make sense to us, or that no longer works for us, because we're going through some kind of transition, internal or external. How is one able to separate that which works for you from that which doesn't?
I think that what you do is you go out on a limb, you go out on your own. And words like the Force are very attractive to someone like that, because it hasn't been taken possession of by a formal religious group. It's very informal and was popularized by a popular television serial. So it is kind of, you could say, modern. It suits people who don't want to be part of something too traditional, but who really want to explore spirituality without being nailed down, So it's a kind of almost like a cult word without being a cult. And people don't like cults, but they want to be in, and I think there are other words too that have become popular. Even the word mindfulness, which is very much part of the traditional Buddhist way, the practice of mindfulness has now been popularized and taken over by other people, and it comes in the press all the time, and now it's a fashionable expression referring to a variety of different types of practice which are informal. And so this is, I think, what people like. They don't want to be tied down to something or have to sign on any dotted line or swear allegiance or anything like that. They want to be fluid. They want to be able to change their minds, to explore, to go wherever as it were, the spirit moves them. And so this sense of the Force, or another very important word in this, is higher power. When we use the word God, there are implications and connotations. It's a male, patriarchal, punishing type of figure who probably will send you to hell, and that's not very attractive. If you say higher power, it's lost a gender preference already, which is good, because people don't like the patriarchy that is associated with the word God, because there's this law enforcement aspect that's connected with it. The people who use the term the Force or the higher power have absolutely taken out the whole thing to do with the punishment. You see, the problem with conventional religion is the threats, the messages that are punitive, the moralizing, the forcing, the abuses that are associated with that, and people just do not want to have anything to do with that. So they find another vocabulary to refer to that part that is really pure, and to defang it of the impure aspect that got mixed into it.
One of the things that happens when you embark on your own spiritual mission, as it were, or albeit an internal one, is that if you were born into a formal religion and you have almost all the members of your family following it strictly, then there is within a sense of guilt for daring to go out on a limb, daring to be different. You may experience internal guilt, and then the people around you may let you know in no uncertain terms that you're betraying them and your religion. How does one deal with that?
Well, you have to see what your situation is, and of course there are many who are in that kind of situation. I was lucky enough not to be, so I never had to deal with that in a personal way. But I do encounter many people who did, and it takes actually quite a lot of time and effort for a person to extract themselves from that that propaganda, from that indoctrination, and so on, because those religions that operate in that way are very competent in getting people to feel a certain way, and that's nothing to do with God, nothing to do with spirituality, and it's a phenomenon. You find something similar in political ideologies that are enforced on groups of people or on countries. You want your freedom of thought, your freedom of expression, which is something that is one of the values of the human experience, then you have to fight for it, you have to work for it, you have to find a way to be in your freedom. And I think that if you are, as it were, contaminated by any negative reactive emotion and become confrontational, that which you are confronting can be pretty violent towards you, and it may be counterproductive to do it that way. But in order to, there's an expression, if a big stone falls on your hand, if you want to get your hand out, you have to extract it very delicately and slowly, otherwise it'll tear off your skin and sinews and flesh. So I think it's an analogy for how you have to extract yourself from that influence, that dominance of that organized propaganda machine that had taken hold of your consciousness.
What do you need when you are trying to come to your own core? What do you need to know that what you're doing is right for you? How do you go about discovering your spiritual identity and re-establishing yourself in that way? Are there guidelines? Is it a walk in the dark? Can you feel along the walls to see, what's happening?
When you want to follow that inner voice, it's an inner voice. So you do your thinking, and that conversation that you have with yourself is something very real, depending on the accessibility that you have. There's a huge body of literature that deals with spirituality, and you have to explore, you have to research until you find what corresponds with the inner feelings, the inner voice. it also happens that you can address yourself to that which is out there, the force, and say, you know, I need to know you, I need you to communicate with me, and you invoke that experience, that validation, signs, signals, and you do get responses. This is something that we find. So that you get led, you get guided to where you have to go, and there will be some people who you encounter who will validate what you are looking for, and there you find the company.
You shared earlier that for many, not only are you looking for God, God is looking for you. How does He let you know that you're in His purview?
Well, you know, God tracks you throughout eternity, so you never really lost.
Oh, gosh, that's so beautiful. That is so beautiful to know, because I think many of us have this fear, God has forgotten about me. We've got this fear that is so deep-seated, we dare not even articulate it to our closest people.
No, it's very important to know that God is very competent.
Well, I don't doubt His competency, but the separation has been so long that you have to convince yourself that there's still a link, because the link has become very tenuous.
That's right, that's
Okay.
right.
So, okay, you have to say that line again, just for it to sink in again.
Well, what I was saying is that God tracks you throughout eternity. So God always knows where you are, what you're doing, what you're thinking, what you're feeling. And actually God is very reciprocal. So the more you address yourself to God in ways that correspond to how God actually is, and sometimes you might do that by mistake, you will make a connection, you will experience something. And so I think in a way what God is sort of waiting for is for you to say the right thing, ask the right question, in order to be able to respond to you in a way that is sufficiently tangible to you, so that you know that yes, He is there for you. A time comes, you know, because there's this whole aspect of the right time, and there is a time when you come to God. And when that time comes, there'll be all sorts of indicators to let you know it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's there. And then you have to sustain it and look after it. And then God becomes your friend, your mother, your father, your teacher, your companion, all the different relationships that you sought to experience fulfillment through different human beings. You experience all of that in one, and you start to have access to the mind of God, the heart of God, the attitude of God. You start to have your karma with God, which is very, very powerful karma. And then that, of course, changes how you live your life. Yeah.
Yes, Denise, this question arises now in this context. How does your relationship with your mother and father of this body impact on one's relationship with God?
I think it impacts quite a lot. For example, if you've had a bad relationship with your mother and or father, then when God comes up as a possibility to be your father, you say, well, I don't do father. That doesn't work for me. And so it's like an area where you're not able to take sustenance. So then you have to go to an area where you can take sustenance. Maybe you don't want to develop the parental experience, but you like to have God as a friend, because friend works for you. You know, Sometimes, you know, I think, well, look, you know, why can't you just be God? Don't have all these other relationships. Just be God, and I can have God as God. Why not? What's wrong with that? You know, because it doesn't have any of the connotations of all the problems that happen in human relationships.
And it does not have worldly nuances.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I like to do that.
I see. Okay, so one has to be aware that your relationship with people here on earth impacts the way you view God, but because God is so unique, you can have a relationship with Him that doesn't have a human title to it.
Yes, and I think that's quite good, so I go for that, you know. But there are some cultures that are so caught up in relationships and that you don't have an identity if you don't have a mother, father, sister, brother, whatnot, and so forth. But the culture that I come from, your identity doesn't come from the people that you're related to. You see, for me, my identity comes from me. And I'm not concerned about being the daughter of, sister of, brother of, whatever it is. That's not in my cultural baggage, you can say. So I'm a person who is very used to my own company, and my sense of self is to do more with how my mind works, what I like, what I agree with, what I think, you know, all of this, you see. And so then God comes into there as a very special person and a great complement or a complementary relationship, which has nothing to do with the human world, you know. But a lot of people are not like that.
Okay, so do what works for you. So, Sister Denise, we're coming to the end of today's episode. The Force, how does one keep the power of the divine with you, even though you're just commencing your spiritual journey, even though you have more questions than answers, even more you have more doubt than faith, even though you have all of your insecurities and fears, your baggage, but yet there's a pull towards God. How do you sustain that energy?
God is the teacher. God is the intelligence of the wise. God communicates. God has a great deal to say. God will say, you know what? I'm God, and you're my child. Now we need to get together. So it's not that just only you are reaching out to God. God is reaching out to you. So it is symbiotic. It is a relationship that works two ways. And so you need to come into contact with what God teaches. You need access to that. And then start to study that and work with that, because these teachings cause you at the level of the mind to be close to God and enable you to have your own communication with God, where you're not dependent on some intermediary. So this is a wonderful thing, you know, and this is how you develop it, cultivate it, keep it going, and sustain yourself.
Sister Denise, thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom. It's been extremely educational.
Thank you.
So there you have it. May the Force be with you. And in this context, it is the spiritual force and not any other kind. We all have spiritual dreams and desires, whether we realize it or not. There's something within us that's pulled towards our own truth, as well as the truth, the Supreme Soul. And so Sister Denise has answered the questions that may exist in your mind as regards your own personal quest. And we do wish you everything of the best in your spiritual journey. May the Force be with you. Goodbye.